Hello students, today we'll see the next topic in the chapter carbohydrate. In the previous lecture, we have seen that different kinds of liquid chromatographic technique, that is reverse phase chromatography, normal phase chromatography, then anion exchanger chromatography. So today we'll see the next topic, that is cation exchange chromatography, and various kinds of detectors used in the HPLC, such as a refractive index detector and the electrochemical detector. And the next topic is the gas chromatography. So let us see one by one. So the first one is the cation exchange chromatography. As we know that in the previous lecture, anion exchange are nothing but the negatively charged species. It will exchange its anion by using some resins. So similar manner, whenever the microparticulate spheres of sulfur-lated resins are there, uh, they are useful in the cation exchange stationary phases. So the resin is loaded with one of the variety of metal counterions depending on the type of the separation which we desire. Usually, calcium 2 plus, lead 2 plus, and silver plus is used as a counter ion for the cation exchanger chromatography. So generally, the mobile phase used with these columns is water plus different varying amount of other organic solvent, that is around 40%. So of an organic solvent such as acetonitrile uh, and or methanol in that particular composition. So these columns normally are operated at elevated temperature of greater than 80 degrees Celsius, or increase the column efficiency by increasing the mass transfer rate between the stationary and the mobile phase, which effect the peak narrowing and the improved resolution. Generally, the carbohydrate elution from the cation exchanger resins takes place in the order of decreasing molecular weight. Means what? The particular elution is takes place at decreasing. Means what? First elution is taking place at the cation, which is having higher molecular weight. So, oligosaccharide with a degree of polymerization greater than 3 elute first, followed by the trisaccharide, then disaccharide, monosaccharide, and finally the retards. So, there is some resolution of disaccharide, but real strength of this stationary phase is in the separation of individual monosaccharides. Okay. Then the next one is the detectors used in the high performance liquid chromatography. Generally, what happens? There are various kinds of detectors are used in the HPLC techniques, such as uh, photodiode detector, then UV detector, then we have a refractive index detector, electrochemical detector, then MS as a detector. But generally, in the case of carbohydrate in mono and oligosaccharide, generally refractive index detector and the electrochemical detector is mostly useful. If you consider, for example, if you consider the UV detector, so generally UV plays important role in the particular UV rays. Okay, that's why it is not helpful, or it is not useful in this area of analysis. Generally, what happens is carbohydrate doesn't contain such kind of dyes and enones, and that's why there is a we cannot get any kind of ultraviolet radiation absorption in that particular compound. That's why other kinds of detector are used in this kind of technique, in this kind of compound analysis. So the refractive index detector is commonly employed for the carbohydrate analysis. So the RI measurements are linear over a wide range of carbohydrate concentrations and can be universally applied to all carbohydrates. But the RI detector has its drawback, that RI is a bulk physical property, and that is sensitive to change in flow, pressure, and temperature. But with a modern HPLC equipment and the temperature control detector, problems arising from these changes can be minimized. Generally, what happens? Refractive index. So it is associated with some kind of physical properties, such as from that we can get an idea about the density. So as there is a change in pressure, flow, and the temperature, the particular density, or we can say the refractive index, will be different for the different kinds of solutions. If you change the concentration of the solution, that RI becomes different. So it will affect on the analysis. So the most significant limiting factor with the RI detection is that gradient elution cannot be used. So the other is that since RI detector measures mass, it is not sensitive to the low concentration. So here we require two cases is that we require the high concentration of the solution, that is highly concentrated samples. Then we cannot perform the gradient dilution for that method, that is the refractory index detector. So these are the some limitations. Then we have next electrochemical detector. So the triple pulse electrochemical detector called pulse amperometric detector, which is relies on the oxidation of carbohydrate hydroxyl and aldehyde group, is universally used with a anion exchange liquid chromatography. So it requires high pH. So generally what happens in order to oxidize that carbohydrate groups such as the hydroxyl and aldehyde present in the carbohydrate, we require high pH. So gradient and graded elution can be used with that particular pulse amperometric detector. So the solvents employed are simple and inexpensive, that is the sodium hydroxide solution with or without sodium acetate. So the detector is suitable for both reducing and non-reducing carbohydrates. So the limits are approximately 1.5 nanogram for the monosaccharide and 5 nanogram for di, tri, and tetrasaccharide. So this is the limits for the analysis of this particular electrochemical detector. Then we have next post-column derivitization. So generally what happens? There are certain kinds of compound which are having, which does not having any kind of chromophore is there. So in order to analyze that, the pre or post column derivatization is useful. So the purpose of pre and post column derivatization is to increase the detection sensitivity by addition of substituent whose concentration can be measured using the ultraviolet or fluorescence detector. Okay, so however, with the development of PAD detector, neither pre or post column derivation is much used. So post and pre column derivation is mostly used, and hence PAD detector is not vastly used in that area of analysis. So the post column derivation involves the addition of reagents, okay, that will provide the compound whose concentration can be measured using absorbance. Okay, so we can get a absorbance in the visible range, or in case of fluorescence detection is there, and then from that we can find out the particular concentration of that particular analyte of interest. So it is straightforward, requires only one or two additional pumps, a mixing coil, and the thermostated bath, and provides greater sensitivity that getting from an RI detector. So this is the way by which we have to derivatize given sample with some kind of chromophoric group, so that it will visualize in the UV or fluorescence detector, so that by using this we can analyze the given sample by quantitative way. Then the next one is the pre-column derivatization. So pre-column derivatization reactions must be stoichiometric. Means what? We have to take the particular reagent along with our analyte of interest in stoichiometric ratio. We have to suppose we have to replace that particular any atom in the particular group. For example, there is a carboxylic acid group, so that that is the OH bond is there. So we have to replace that H with some kind of chromophoric group. Okay, and hence we have to use the equimolar quantities of this reagent and analyte of interest, so that we can get an exact amount of that particular analyte of interest whenever we have performed the analysis. So the oligosaccharides derivatized with aromatic group are often separated with higher resolution in the normal phase HPLC. So the oligosaccharide, okay. So whenever we have considering oligosaccharide with some aromatic groups, for example, some aromatic groups such as naphthalene, benzene, whenever we have react with that or derivatives with that, we have to get a proper resolution whenever we have considering the normal phase of liquid chromatography. Then next one is the gas chromatography. So word itself indicates that this particular chromatography is associated with the gas as a mobile phase. Okay. So like HPLC, it provides both qualitative and quantitative analysis of carbohydrates. So for the GC, sugar must be converted into volatile derivatives. So this is the most important aspect whenever we have differentiate HPLC and GC. So in the HPLC, what happened? In the HPLC, we have to just take the sample and we have to analyze the sample uh, uh, without using or without derivatizing the particular sample. But in case of GC, there must be the need to derivatize the given sample. So why there is need to volatile, or we can say the need to derivatize the sample. So whenever we have derivatized the sample, it makes the particular derivative which is volatile in nature. So generally what happens with the GC, whenever we have injected the sample in the GC, that particular sample whenever injected, it should be volatile. Okay. So so that whenever it passes into the column, it will give rise to the proper response. Means what? It volatile means it goes to the gaseous state. And as we know that this is the gas phase chromatography, the particular mobile phase is the gas. And that's why whenever the particular derivatized compound, whenever analyte of interest is come into the column, there is a the particular compound is in the gaseous state, and hence whenever this particular compound is gaseous state, then and then there is a proper separation, or we can say the analysis is possible. So the most commonly used derivative are the alditol peracetates, that is aldonic acid, and per trimethylsilane ethers from the uronic acid. So these derivatives are prepared in the figure, such as whenever we have using the D-galactose. This particular D-galactose undergoes reduction with the NaBH4. So what is happening here? So that NaBH4 will cause reduction of this aldehyde into alcohol is going to be takes place. Okay, and whenever such reduction is takes place, this particular uh, D-galactylol galactitol, whenever acetalized with some kind of acetyl groups, then there is a complete acetylation of OH group is going to be takes place. And hence, whenever such kind of acetylation takes place, the particular molecule, that is D-galactitol pentaacetate, becomes volatile in nature, and whenever we have injected the sample of this galactitol pentaacetate, there is a volatilization is going to be takes place, and hence the molecule get into the gaseous state, and hence there is a separation is going to be takes place in the gas chromatographic column. So the conversion of sugar into per-acetylated aldonitrile, that is aldoses, and per-acetylated ketoxime, that is the ketosis derivatives for the GC has been done. Although this procedure is not used nearly as much as the preparation of the per-acetylated aldoses and aldonic acid. A flame ionization detector is the detector of choice for the per-acetylated carbohydrate derivatives. So there are various kinds of detector in the GC, that is flame ionization detector, electrochemical detector, then we have mass detector. So the flame ionization detector is generally used for the analysis of per acetylated carbohydrate derivatives. So the most serious problem with GC for carbohydrate analysis is that two preparation steps are involved, that is the reduction of aldehyde groups into the primary alcohol groups, and then conversion of reduced sugar into the volatile peracetate ester or per trimethylsilane ether derivatives. So these are the serious problems. That is, there are a series of that means there are two different reactions are to be happen with that. So for the analysis, of course, for the analysis to be successful, each of these steps must be 100% complete. Okay, so there must be the 100% conversion of that particular uh, aldehyde, that means aldoses into the alcohol, and finally the alcohol into the corresponding pentaacetate derivative. So there must be the stoichiometric conversion is going to be takes place. If there is some amount of reactant is remain, then it will cause some kind of interferences in the analysis. That's why there must be the 100% conversion of reactant into the product is going to be takes place. So this is the another reaction where we have a D-galacturonic acid, sodium salt of D-galacturonic acid whenever reduced with the NaBH4, it will give rise to the galacturonic acid, sodium salt of that L-galacturonic acid, and then whenever this particular compound when react with the trimethylsilyl group, okay, trimethylsilylamine group, then there is a formation of TMS derivatives, that is the OTMS derivatives. So this is one another, that is a pentatrimethylsilyl ether is formed. So this ether, that is a trimethylsilyl galactonate pentatrimethyl ether is volatile in nature, okay, and that's why it is also used in the analysis of that particular carbohydrate by using GC. Then next one is the neutral sugar. Whenever we have considering neutral sugar, so the neutral sugar from the 80% ethanol extract or from hydrolysis of polysaccharide are reduced with excess of sodium or potassium borohydrate, which is dissolved in ammonium hydroxide solution. So after reaction at 40 degrees Celsius, glyceric acid is added dropwise until no more hydrogen is evolved. So there is a complete reduction is going to be takes place. So this treatment destroys excess borohydride. So the acidified solution is evaporated to dryness. So the borate ions may be removed as methyl borate by successive additions and evaporation of the methanol. But this step is not necessary. So the potential problem is that fructose, whenever present, it is either in the naturally occurring sugar from the hydrolysis of insulin or as an additive, it will be reduced to the mixture of D-glucitol, that is the sorbitol and D-mannitol, and hence there is a problem is arises with the particular analysis. This is the reaction where D-fructose whenever undergoes reduction, it will cause D-glucitol. Okay, D-glucitol. Here, what happens? The position of here there is a aldehyde group is there. So whenever we are using here NaBH4, it will cause formation of two different isomers. Okay, so here D-glucitol and D-mannitol will be formed. One is having OH position from right hand side, other is having OH position from the left hand side, and hence there is a some kind of difficulty will arises while analyzing or while analyzing that particular sample. So as with the hydrolysate, okay, so the next one, hydrolysate of polysaccharide containing uranic acids. So, as with the hydrolysate containing only neutral sugars, the hydrolysate is evaporated to dryness. So, the residue is dissolved in the sodium carbonate solution and treated with the excess of sodium borohydride. So, the excess borohydride is decomposed by addition of glacial acetic acid, and borate may be removed by addition and evaporation of the methanol. So this procedure reduces uranic acid to aldonic acid and aldoses to alditols. So this is the reaction where whenever we have using that D-fructose and undergoes reduction, it will give rise to the D-glucitol plus D-mannitol. Then next one is the preparation and chromatography of trimethylsilyl derivatives. So how we have to analyze that? So the aldonic acids are converted into per trimethylsilyl ether rather than the per acetate ethers. So the trimethylsilylation of free aldonic acid gives derivatives of lactose. So mostly the 1,4-lactone is there. So So while trimethylcellulation of the sodium salt produces an ester. So the several procedures and packaged reagents have been developed for this kind of etherification. So the reaction mixture is injected directly into the chromatograph and the temperature programming is required in this case. So the components are identified by their retention time. So this is all about today's lecture. So in the next lecture we will see other topics, that is the gas chromatography and various kinds of applications or various kinds of analytical tool for the carbohydrate analysis. Okay, thank you.